This is Steve Carlson. I want to speak out about democracy, free speech, and human rights, following the fraud election of Al Franken, and following the act of war against our ally in the Middle East, France. I condemn Charlie Hebdo and Stéphane Charbonnier, a figure not unlike Larry Flint, who publishes despicable trash for money. But there's a bigger issue here, a far bigger issue, because it concerns the prospect for peace in the United States, in the West, and throughout the world. Minnesota politicians from the Democrats and Republicans naturally will not address these, since it puts no money in their pockets, which is, of course, their chief concern. And they think, hey, why stick my neck out to stop World War III? But I believe most Minnesotans and most Americans do care about human rights and do care about peace. This is not an opportunity to attack Barack Obama, although he clearly is not leading on this. The issue here is protection of religious liberties and persecution based on religion. And what no one in the media will discuss is this. French law and also U.S. law protect people against speech. They protect the Muslims. Slutty mainstream media moguls will refuse to talk about this and will accept no limits on their profiteering in so-called free speech. Meanwhile, they are deathly afraid of taking the money out of politics, so they'll gladly trash the First Amendment in elections, except that they claim the right to rake in billions of dollars by strangling our elections. That is their cash cow, and they make our freedom, as our dreams of justice, prostitutes for their profits. That's how people like Al Franken become entrenched, using the vehicle of the gender and race quotas and anti-religion quotas of the Democratic Party. But this video is about laws protecting people from these propaganda machines that manipulate your mind, and they do, and are, regarding the danger in Paris. The propaganda pushers want you to believe there are absolutely no limits on their speech or publication. Well, there are. Certainly, we're all familiar with defamation laws and libel laws, and these are maintained and upheld all the way up to our Supreme Court. So right away, you know that it is a lie that there are not and should not be any limits on Stéphane Charbonnier and his ilk to torment religions. Yes, he tormented many religions illegally and also flagrantly violated laws against portraying drugs positively in the media. All violations of French law, as I'll explain more fully. And hate speech, this cash cow of your so-called trustworthy neutral media, is so sacred to the propaganda pushers that you will hear no one question this media lie, even if it starts World War III. Hey, they just get rich in World War III. They would welcome it. First, we need to compare French law and Constitution with our First Amendment, and you will find it is quite different. In fact, diametrically opposed. Still, using our political correctness and hate speech laws, we achieve very similar results. Again, people are protected against hate speech and defamation. The difference has to do with restraint of speech by the U.S. Congress in the case of the First Amendment. But in the French Constitution, the Parliament, or their Congress, has not only a right but a duty to establish limits on free speech by statute. So, this is diametrically opposed. Translated, freedom of the press in France, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen of constitutional value, that means equivalent to a constitution, states in its Article 11, quote, translated, the free communication of thoughts and of opinions is one of the most precious rights of man, and any citizen thus may speak, print, or write freely, save if it is necessary to respond to the abuse of this liberty by the case as determined by law. This says that this declaration of ancien origin finds that the liberty of freely speaking, writing, and printing can be abused, and that this may be brought before a court, including cases established by statutes passed by Parliament. For in Title V of the Constitution, relations between Parliament and government, it provides in Article 34, laws are voted by Parliament, laws determine the rules concerning civic rights and the fundamental guarantees of the public liberties of the citizens, also the obligations of citizens as regards their persons and property for purposes of national defense. And here's their preamble. The French people solemnly proclaim their attachment to the rights of man and the principles of national sovereignty as defined by the Declaration of 1789. That's when our Judiciary Act was passed in the United States and when our Constitution was ratified, confirmed and complemented by the preamble to the Constitution of 1946, which says, by virtue of these principles and that of the self-determination of peoples, the Republic offers to the overseas territories that express the will to adhere to them new institutions founded on the common ideal of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and conceived with a view to that democratic development. Article 1. France shall be an indivisible, secular, democratic, and social republic. It shall ensure the equality of all citizens before the law, without distinction of origin, race, or religion. It shall respect all beliefs. In this current situation, what this means is that the satirical enterprise that was attacked consistently violated French law. It shall respect all belief. It shall ensure the equality of all citizens before the law without distinction of origin, race, or religion. And those statutes included statutes against any kind of xenophobic activity, any kind of incitement to hatred, which a lot of the Muslims have already mentioned, that they felt they were not given that protection. And also there's anti-Semitic laws. You can't make anti-Semitic statements, or as I was saying, you cannot portray drugs in a positive light. All of these are violations, and they're all things that Stéphane Charbonnier consistently, flagrantly flouted and violated. Now, to be sure, the attackers took the law into their own hands, and that's wrong. However, they were guided by an outside force and actually have created a condition of war. So it's not just that they violated the law. And by overlooking the violation of citizenship embedded in this attack, really an act of war, and by imposing our own U.S. First Amendment requirements on France, and this unrestrained press attack on Muslims, which in my estimation tormented them, our U.S. media is covering up an important part of this problem and really escalating the situation to the brink of a huge international conflict, which is contrary to our interests. It is the duty of the U.S. media to explain the dynamics of this volatile situation, which clearly provides propaganda for an attack on the United States and our interests, and sets back our efforts to maintain our freedom and safety in the campaign just ended by Barack Obama. I'm talking about in Afghanistan and Iraq. Just to compare the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. As you can see, it restricts only Congress and has been extended to state governments by the 14th Amendment. By comparison, the French promise is that the press will be independent of the government, but its freedom is not defined in the Constitution. And in fact, it is clear that it will be regulated by acts of the Parliament, which I mentioned already, such things as xenophobic activities, incitement to hatred, anti-Semitic statements, etc. And of course, the Constitution guarantees that they will respect all beliefs. So obviously, Stéphane Charbonnier violated the French Constitution. So what we must do is to tell the truth and to advocate that the rights of all French will be protected. Certainly we cannot support a provocation against Islam or any religion, and in this country, United States, Islam is protected by the restraint on government not to make a law respecting the establishment of religion. That's no state religion. And no prohibition of the free exercise of Islam or any religion. Just as in France, the understanding, respect for, and protection of the law will be essential in achieving the freedom and democracy on which our nation is founded and the freedom it envisions for all. We need to defend this. And so I hope that you will take another look at what is in our interests and will not support any provocation based on religion or race or national origin. We want to respect all Americans, and we want the same in France and throughout Europe, and we want that throughout the Middle East. We want respect for Christians throughout the Middle East. We want any kind of ethnic, religious killings to stop. But in order to do this, the law and constitution of France and of the United States are powerful tools which we cannot cast aside. We must cling to those, and we must cling to our vision of liberty, which they underlie. I'm Steve Carlson. I approve this message.